Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to a brand new installment in our Reviewed and Ranked series as we make our way through the playable roster of the Ultimate Alliance 3 cast. And today we have a very special character, a character much beloved by anyone who has dabbled in the Marvel Universe. Of course, that is Iron Man. And this character is fairly faithful to his renditions of what we've seen with other playable iterations of him, and I'm excited to go over him in a little bit more detail in today's video. But as we get started, make sure you check to see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, go ahead and fix that real quick, as I bring videos to you every single day from a variety of different games. And if you find today's video helpful and or enjoyable, please make sure to leave a like. So Iron Man, let's look at what he brings to the table. He has 7 different team building synergies in 5 different categories. He has 2 vitality synergies with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Smooth Operators, which I believe Smooth Operators is the first. I don't recall that we've seen that so far in the series, which means that there's bound to be someone else that has that synergy later on down the road. He also has 2 synergies in the energy category with the Avengers and Team Leaders. And then he has a mastery synergy with original Avengers, a resilience synergy with big brains, and a defense synergy with heavy metal. So all things considered, Iron Man is a pretty good option when it comes to covering your bases with a lot of different synergy types. So from that standpoint, he's a decent option just to make sure that you can bolster the base statistics of your team. Moving on to the standard attacks in Iron Man's kit, of course we have his basic attacking combo. This is a 4-hit melee combo where he will get right up in the face of the opponents that he is fighting against, and that last hit is a downward swinging punch that connects into the ground that will provide some knockback out of that combo. And anytime you have a character that will allow the opponents that you're facing off against to be buffered and deterred from retaliating, especially if they're the smaller grunt type characters, you know that you're going to have a decent character when it comes to making sure that you're going to get your money's worth and avoid taking any unnecessary damage as well. Iron Man's heavy attack has a little bit more range to it, as it is a series of 2 little repulsor blasts from his palm side repulsors. The first hit is straight out and the second one has more of an upward angle on it. That second hit will provide that knockback blast to provide a little bit more clearance as well as additional damage. And you can combo this out of the first 3 hits of the basic attack to improve your overall damage output depending on what the circumstance calls for. Iron Man, of course, has a jump, and upon activating that jump again in the air, as it would be expected, he does activate a fly animation, and his flight is pretty standard with other characters that do fly. And as a general reminder, anytime you are activating a flight attribute out of a double jump with any character, Iron Man included, you will notice that there is the energy points from your ability meter that is consumed. So make sure that you're using this sparingly unless you have a specific use for it, such as getting away from floor traps or other obstacles that need to be navigated. Iron Man's falling aerial is actually pretty unique in its behavior. As you mash on either the standard attack or heavy attack button while airborne, Iron Man will send out a series of small repulsor blasts as he makes his way down to the ground. And it's not bad in terms of laying down some covering fire and actually prolongs the amount of time that Iron Man can spend in the air. On the damage side, it's not the greatest option that he has, but it can mix up your options, especially if you are facing off against opponents that are stationary and taking up large amounts of the ground or providing large hitbox type areas that are catching the rest of your team off guard. So it's not the worst falling aerial I've ever seen. I do wish that it was a little more efficient in the damage it outputs, but at the very least, it gets you up and out of the way. It helps to replenish a little bit to your energy point meter, as well as not consuming anything from that meter when it is being used. And Iron Man's block and dodge animation has a fairly standard arm brace up in front of his upper chest area to block the incoming damage from those different strikes. And the dodge animation is a dash in the direction of input as you seek to move yourself out of harm's way. So let's transition over and talk about Iron Man's unique abilities. And we start off with what is the quintessential Iron Man attack, that being the Unibeam. However, it is lackluster in its overall performance. As expected, this is a beam of energy in the direction that the character is facing. You can hold down this button to continue using the attack and manipulate the direction of input as the attack is being carried out. Though it does allow Iron Man to have some additional ranged capabilities, the damage that it provides, again, is the worst out of his abilities that he has at his disposal, with an F classification in the damage and stagger categories, but it does make up for its overall versatility, with the energy point consumption being in that B category, allowing you to sustain this ability for longer amounts of time than you would other abilities in Iron Man's kit. As we've already mentioned, it is the energy attack type. It has the beam synergy trait, and all of Iron Man's unique abilities gain from rank up bonuses the ability to have a reduced energy point cost, and increase the attack damage, and increase to stagger damage dealt, and finally that reduced chance of attacks being interrupted. Iron Man's second ability is a lot better on the damage front. It's not as good in the overall range that it has, but the repulsor array attacks the vicinity while spinning around and shooting lasers. And Iron Man actually spins around a couple of different times, though it is important to note that any grunt type enemies upon being contacted or hit with one of those lasers will be knocked back, whereas the mighty enemies or mini boss type enemies can get hit multiple times by the lasers as Iron Man spins around. It has the energy attack type as well as the area assault synergy trait, and has C's around the boards in its damage output, stagger damage output, and energy point cost. It's a decent get off me tool if Iron Man finds himself surrounded by a lot of those grunt type enemies. And there are better options for damage output that we are going to look at momentarily, but by all means not a bad option when it comes to layering in some additional damage. Iron Man's third ability is the thruster charge, and this is Iron Man's go-to attack when it comes to stagger damage, as it has an A classification in the stagger damage that can be dealt, and maintaining a C damage rating to the health damage as well as the energy point cost. This, unlike the other abilities that Iron Man has the melee attack type, as it makes physical contact with the opponents rather than a energy or other type of blast, and has the charge synergy trait. You can hold to charge this attack as well as minimally influence the direction of output at the end of the charge, though if you synergize this attack with another ability on your team, it will detonate immediately in the direction that the character is facing. Iron Man's final ability is the missile barrage, and this involves homing missiles being sent out and spreading and auto-locking onto different opponents throughout the battlefield. This has a better damage output and is better for overall crowd control, especially against those grunt type characters where it has the A damage classification, but it is lacking in the stagger damage that it can deal with that D classification, and maintains that pretty standard C clarification in the energy point cost. This attack has the energy attack type again, and it has the burst synergy trait, though I disagree with this because it's more consistent with attacks such as the timed grenades that have that explosive characteristic that we've seen. But I'm not the one that put the label on it. I'm just here to report what it is technically labeled as. So if you're looking for damage output, this is going to be a better attack to use, but the thruster charge of all of Iron Man's abilities is probably the most reliable in terms of overall damage output that you're going to get, especially when it comes to taking down the stagger gauges of some of the tougher enemies that you'll come across. Iron Man's extreme attack is powerful but has some definite drawbacks. For starters, you need to know exactly where the point of detonation is going to be and line yourself up, because there is a focal point between the unibeam of Iron Man and the 2 iron drones that he brings in to help with that attack. And there is no time for course correction. As soon as you hit that extreme attack, the point is locked in and the attack will run its course over the 5 or so seconds that it takes for the attack to fully conclude. If you do manage to land a mini boss character in the focal point of the attack, you are going to be able to deal a decent amount of damage with this extreme attack, but you can't just light it off willy-nilly as you can with some of the other extreme attacks that we've noticed, or ones that you can alter or change once they've been detonated. So be cautious with this extreme attack as you seek to use it. And as you do, you will be ensured to have the maximum yield from this attack specifically. And now, with everything we've looked at regarding Iron Man's character, it's time for us to place him in our ranked tier list. And he is a good character. He's available pretty early on in the game cycle. But the big problem is that first ability that he has is incredibly lackluster in terms of the damage output that it has, which really kind of hurts his early game viability. As you rank him up, he does get better and better as he has access to infinitely better attacks and abilities. So where would I place him? He's definitely not on the bottom half of this tier list, and I do think that he fits very comfortably in the B tier, mainly because the characters that are in A tier and S tier, they have attacks that just work and deal a good amount of damage, as well as offering other benefits to the team. So where within B tier do I think that Iron Man belongs? Well, I do think that he belongs ahead of Falcon, because Falcon has some pretty weak hits in his standard combos, which is a little bit sad. I also feel like he just edges out Deadpool in terms of the damage that he can output and the abilities that he has. And I do feel comfortable placing him right here between Gamora and Deadpool, at least for the time being. Maybe I'll bolster him up a rank or two within this tier, but we'll have to see where the other characters fall into this ranking as we cover them. But what do you think? Do you think that I ranked him too high, too low? What are your thoughts on his different abilities? Do you think there's anything that I missed? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. Once again, if you're not subscribed and you've made it this far into the video, please make sure and fix that, because it's obvious that you enjoy what I'm doing. Leave a like on today's video if you found it helpful or enjoyable, and we will see you next time. Thanks again for watching, and have a great rest of your day.